Welcome to another episode of the Robinson-Hewitt Pod. This is where we talk about the future of technology and what it means to be human in the next era of tech. I'm your host, Alison Mackey. I'm a futurist, anthropologist of emerging technology, and founder of Robinson-Hewitt Consulting. Welcome. So today's episode is one that I've been wanting to do for a very long time because it's one of the tools that I use as a futurist, and it's something that I've been developing since I was a child. And if you heard one of our latest episodes on Can Your Body Hold Your Idea, or even in the Future of Leadership episode, you know that I have been referencing this idea of needing to learn what is a yes and what is a no within your body. Because those who are bringing in the next era, one of the skills that it will set you apart is your perception and your own personal navigating system. How to actually trust yourself when the world around you is being very loud, when everyone has an opinion about what you should do, as well as those AI chatbots thinking they know everything. And I want to talk to you about what this looks like practically, what it looks like historically, and where I think this is all going. So like many of us who are in the midst of personal transformation, the ones who are trying to bring in the next era, I'm in the middle of breaking down a lot of my own assumptions about my own life right now as well. Part of this work is actually to stop myself from labeling things as good or bad and just letting things be neutral for their own sake. And it's actually harder than it sounds, because what I've learned over the years is that everything is neutral. It's your response to what that thing is that actually gives it meaning. And this is all filtered through your belief system and your assumptions. And I keep having these moments where I need to make a decision on something, but I end up just freezing and my mind goes blank. And I know a lot of people can relate to this, of getting really overwhelmed when they need to make the right call, but you end up making no call at all. And so you end up looking outside of yourself, hoping someone else will help give you the answers of what to do, what not to do, and to tell you if you're on the right track or not. And a few episodes ago, we did mention Sylvia Plath's fig tree and that idea that indecision holds us back while all of our potential futures just fall away. And I think this episode today is going to help be the practical follow through to that one, because we talked about what holds us back in terms of our own capacity. But today I want to talk about what can help us move forward. And I know what it's like to put someone else's words as gospel, to put someone else's opinions above my own, because we see it all the time through our churches, our political leaders who are trying to maintain control. We see it through our parents who swear that they know better than us, or the boss who's just trying to dodge a lawsuit, or with our friends who are just trying to play devil's advocate. And now in this era, we have another player within the mix, and it's an AI chatbot. And so I think the question that sits underneath all of this in an age where AI can draw on information from all corners of the ether, what is the most important human skill left? And I personally think it's our perception, our ability to know things that can't be measured, to sense into the unseen. And if you know our tagline at Robinson-Hewitt Consulting, you know that we are all about transforming the traditional with the unseen, because that's where we will bring in the next era of innovation and ideas. So let's get into it all. So let's get into the current state of play when it comes to perception and our ability to have our own personal navigating system. So I've said this in many episodes, that society is navigating two tracks at once. There are people who are ready to build the future, and then there's everybody else who's still operating within the old system, trying to hold on to what they've always known. And most of us are trying to build the future while also managing all of this external noise with our old conditioning and old ways. But our biological responses that were designed to keep us safe are again starting to fire up because we're stepping outside of the normal tracks and stepping onto our own. And again, it's really important to remember that every time when someone challenges your idea, or when you get asked something on the spot, or when you're about to do something entirely new, your nervous system will treat it like a threat. And it makes sense from a survival standpoint. But it doesn't help us when we're trying to build things that don't exist yet. And on top of all of that, we have AI chatbots that can produce things instantaneously, confidently, fast, detailed answers with the odd hallucination here and there. And I think it can be useful if it's used responsibly, but it also means that we've created this tool that has this ability to train ourselves, to reach externally before we've even checked what we already know internally. And when we talk about outsourcing to AI, a lot of the time people are referencing our jobs and our careers and things like that. But what I'm interested in is this idea of outsourcing our own agency, our own internal knowing for decision making and trusting what we already know within. Because the more that we outsource this skill of perception, the more that we lose that muscle of having our own internal internal knowing. So within our Can Your Body Hold Your Idea episode, we talked about visibility and the wounds that stop us from being seen as different. And this connects directly to that, because when our perception gets warped, when we're absorbing everyone else's opinions before we've even formed our own, we're not just confused. We're cut off from the very thing that gives us our ideas, and that can cost us as founders. So the question that I kind of want to hold throughout this entire episode is how to actually trust yourself. How can we learn to trust ourselves, trust our bodies, our perception, and our own intuition? And of course, if we want to take a look into the future, we have to take a look back in time to notice the patterns. So when we talk about intelligence today, we almost always mean information. We admire the people who know the most, who can think the fastest, and who have the highest qualifications, or who can simply recall the facts in a moment's notice. Our education system has been built around this idea, and our workplaces do reward it. And even our search engines have conditioned us to believe that the answer is always just a few seconds away. But if we zoom out anthropologically, we realize that this is actually a very recent definition of intelligence. For most of human history, information wasn't abundant. It was completely scarce. So there wasn't a textbook to consult with, a GPS system to follow, or an expert that you could email. Survival depended on something a lot older than accumulated knowledge. It depended on perception. So our ancestors, they weren't simply reacting to the world around them. They were constantly reading it. A hunter didn't just look for an animal out in the wild. They learned to recognize the subtle bend of a blade of grass, the depth of a footprint, the silence of birds that had suddenly stopped singing. And they knew that these weren't isolated pieces of information, but put together, they were almost like little signs. And when you had the ability to notice these things around you, connect them together, and understand what they meant, often determined whether or not they ate that day or they went hungry. It's almost like a mystery of putting all the puzzle pieces together around you, collecting that information, synthesizing it, and learning what's around you. The same has been true beyond hunting. So long before compasses and satellite navigation, Polynesian navigators crossed thousands of kilometers of open ocean, reaching islands scattered across one of the largest bodies of water on Earth. And even today, we still recognize that within our own culture in Aotearoa, New Zealand. But they weren't just following maps in the way that we understand them today. They were reading the movement of ocean swells, the flight patterns of birds, and cloud formations reflecting unseen land, the color of the water and the behavior of the marine life, and the position of the stars. So what looks extraordinary to us today wasn't even considered mystical back then. It was a deeply cultivated way of perceiving the environment through years of observation and embodied knowledge. So Indigenous cultures around the world have developed similar relationship with their landscapes that they call home. And knowledge wasn't something that existed separately from the world. It was woven into it. So understanding came through paying attention, not just what was obvious, but what was changing, what felt different, and what patterns emerged over time. So if you think about it, humans have always been pattern-seeking creatures. So this is long before we invented spreadsheets or statistical models. We've been recognizing patterns within our seasons, our animal migrations, weather systems, and social behaviors. And that's one of the reasons why our species have survived. We've become incredibly good at noticing relationships between seemingly unrelated things. Most of the time we pass it off as Indigenous knowledge or a woman's intuition. But of course, things change. The Industrial Revolution has fundamentally altered what society rewarded. Our factories didn't need people who could read landscapes or navigate oceans by the stars, or even trust their own internal knowing. They needed people who could perform repeatable tasks with consistency and precision. And if you listen to our Future of Education episode, you'll know that our schools also evolved alongside this, which brought us a new economy, training people to memorize information, to follow instructions, and produce the correct answer, according to those in authority. So intelligence has slowly become something that we measure through standardized testing, qualifications, and expertise. And to be clear, those skills built the modern world, and they gave us extraordinary scientific discoveries, technical innovations, and economic growth. It was a great vessel to get us to where we are today, but it's also narrowed our understanding of intelligence itself. So over time, we have started placing more trust in external systems rather than our own perception and own internal knowing. We've trusted maps over landscapes, algorithms over our own instincts, and expertise over observation. So information has become something that we collect rather than something that is discovered. And of course, for a long time, this has made perfect sense for where we were in terms of society. Knowledge has been a competitive advantage. And if you knew something that other people didn't, you had an edge. But today we're entering another transition again. And for the first time in history, information is no longer longer scarce. It's completely infinite. AI can retrieve knowledge in seconds, analyze millions of data points, and recognize patterns across enormous data sets that produce sophisticated answers. So the skills we've spent generations rewarding are becoming increasingly automated, which raises a great anthropological question. So if machines become exceptional at processing information, what kind of human intelligence becomes valuable again? And I don't think we're returning to the past, but I do think that we are rediscovering something that we've slowly stopped practicing. Because perhaps the future isn't asking us to become more intelligent, but maybe to recognize and remember our own intelligence that has always been much bigger than information alone. So what are my futuristic insights telling me today about the future of perception? So I want to start with something that I think is very important to hold on to, that the brain and mind are two different things. So the brain is like a muscle and the mind is so much more. So our left brain handles our logic and our reasoning, and our right handles emotional, creativity, and imagination. But there is a space in between this where you can bypass both and drop into the subconscious. And in that space, you find something very different. It's not logic, it's not emotions, it's something a lot different. And we visit the space when we sleep, and when we daydream, and when we're so deep into something that we get this light bulb moment that just hits us out of nowhere. And in a future where AI is handling more and more of that logical and analytical load, I believe that the people who know how to access this sweet spot space, who can drop into that intentionally and come back with something real, those are the people that will build the most interesting things. And if you followed our episodes on the future of energy and the future of co-founders, you know that I have referenced Ada Lovelace as well as Nikola Tesla. And both of those inventors have used this technique, and it is the technique that I also use as I invent things. So this is where the tools come in, because focus and perspective are not the same thing. Again, focus is what we're looking at, but our perspective is where we're looking from. And most of us spend a lot of our energy trying to change what we focus on, when actually it's our perspective that's letting us down. Because how we see something is filtered through whether we're leading with our head, our heart, our gut, and each of those gives us very different information. So the head we know is rational, it looks for logic. But the heart is emotional, and it processes meaning and integrity and what actually matters. And intuition is a place where those two things balance out and you arrive at something that isn't just logic and it isn't just feeling, it's a knowing. And I think that's a skill that we can actually build. And there is a structural process of helping people bypass their own critical factors and get into the subconscious where all of this untapped information actually lives. And I think learning this muscle and learning how to use this tool for founders is a great way to bypass all of this external noise, to root back into what you know to be true about your own idea. Because as I always say, you are the expert in your idea, so you need to trust that. And knowing how to get into this expanded state, being able to get to the state where you can bypass logic and reason, and you can actually get into the space of knowing, where your thinking becomes clearer and answers come to you so fast. It taps back into this primal knowing that we all have, but we've somehow lost over the years. And our primal instincts weren't built for the conditions that we live within, because we're no longer reading the landscape to avoid predators or strategizing for a hunt. But those same skills of learning to trust the wind, reading the environment before it gives you a clear sign, feeling what's coming before it even arrives, those are still living within us. We've just been told that they don't belong in business or in our everyday lives. But I think it's time to tap back into what we already know. So how do we bring this all into today's context? So if this is the direction that we're facing, how do we start building towards it to learn to trust ourselves and build our own internal navigating system? For individuals, the most important thing you can do is learn what clarity actually feels like in your own body before you need it under pressure. True insight tends to feel different from anxious thinking. It's usually calm and not urgent. And if you're debating with yourself, you probably don't have enough information yet. So start spending a few minutes every morning before you've started your day and just being still and quiet. It doesn't have to be a perfect meditation, but just slowing down long enough to just notice what's already within you. What I usually do is I just spend some time writing out whatever comes to mind. And if you do that long enough, you'll start to notice a pattern. And if you have a decision to make, try imagining yourself already living each option out. And not to analyze it, but just to notice what your first response is and write it all down. Do it for multiple days and see if what you get is consistent. And for builders and founders, start building time into your process for non-rational input. So not instead of evidence, but alongside it. So if your team's decisions are always coming from the head, you're missing information what your body and your environment around you are trying to give you. So practically, this looks like building and reflection time before major decisions, not a debrief after, but an actual pause beforehand. So bring in questions of what does this look like when it's working, when you're in team conversations. So that shift from analytical to experiential unlocks different types of thinking. And for organizations, the biggest thing that you can do right now is stop treating people's internal knowing as the opposite of rigorous thinking and start treating it as if it's a different type of data. So build cultures where people feel encouraged to flag what feels off to them, not just in a metrics way. Practically, this means creating safety for uncertainty, which means leaders have to model it first. So if you are always the most confident person in the room, your team will stop bringing their own perceptions to the table. And the second thing is to audit what is actually impairing good decision making in your organization. The 7 factors that most commonly block listening and learning are external distractions, rehearsing a response while someone is still talking, irrelevant fact checking, imposing personal views, jumping to problem solving too fast, leading with a personal agenda, and being judgmental. So if any of those are baked into your meeting culture, it might be time to rethink it, but it's a good place to start noticing. But before we finish today's episode, I do want to bring in one last little metaphor that I know and love so well. We love referencing butterflies when it comes to this idea of transformation, because a caterpillar, before it even becomes a butterfly, it already has the codes of what it will become. So when it's in the chrysalis, this DNA gets activated and it becomes what it will be. But one of the things that we've mistaken about the butterflies is that they don't just live for 3 simple summer's days. They can actually live a lot longer. I thought I knew everything there were to know about butterflies, but recently I came across something on Instagram talking about butterflies and how they can actually navigate over oceans. And they don't rely on maps or GPS to get to where they're going. Some species rely on the stars to help navigate them. Some rely on electrical magnetic fields of the earth, and some rely on the sun. And instead of using muscle power to get them from A to B, they also use wind currents to help propel them forward. And I think it's something worth remembering when it comes to founders who are helping build the next era. If you know, butterflies are to us representative of the founder's journey and the process of becoming a founder. And it's one of those things of you may not know where you're going. You have to trust that it was already within you to begin with. You just have to go along with the journey. So trust your knowing. Learn what is a yes, what is a no within your body, what feels expanded and what feels contracted. And remember that everything that happens is neutral, but it's your response to it that will determine if it is positive or negative. Learn how to get to that sweet spot to bypass the brain. Find what lies just beneath the surface in your subconscious. That's where all the answers lie. So founders, you already have the code within you. AI can think faster than us, but they can't perceive what hasn't been created yet. I just think that the opportunity here is so big, and it's one that we walk past every day because we've been told our instincts are too soft for serious work. But I believe that the next era of building is going to be led by people who have done the work of knowing themselves, who can tell the difference between the noise and what's a sign, who can trust themselves enough to move on something that they just know internally before they have anything on the external that verifies it. And there's so much that I want to get into when it comes to this idea of perception and internal knowing and the idea of ethics with it as well. And also thinking about your own internal work of blending both versions of yourself, your professional and your personal, and also coming into collaboration with our other co-founders, because the future isn't built by one person, but it's a collaborative process. It's just about remembering what was already within us. And remember, some of us have been working on this skill for a very long time, and we still get it wrong sometimes too. No pressure on yourself. You're just remembering something that is ancient and internal within you, and that takes time. But if today's episode got you thinking, you can come and join your journey with us. We post nearly every day on Instagram, sharing our insights and inspirations for founders and future-facing leaders. It's a good place to stay curious. And if you're ready to go deeper, you can head over to our website at RobinsonHewitt.com. We work at the intersection of anthropology, emerging technology, and future systems thinking, helping future-facing leaders, founders, and businesses transform, evolve, and build the next era. If you're still orienting, we have so many free resources available to help you on your own founder's journey. And if you're ready to take the leap, you can check out our services as well. Make sure to subscribe to help build a better future for everybody. Everything's linked below, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao.